that you have written, as it said in the press, a timeless novel. What was that your aim when you start writing, to be timeless?
Yes, it was. My own preference is for the type of book which is in some way detached or dislocated from the real contemporary world. For me, part of the pleasure of reading is to escape from the everyday and to go to a different place, and from that different place, magical, special, timeless, from there to be able to look at real life with a new perspective. So it's escapism, it's a way of escaping from every day in order to understand life better.
Yeah. But I think your language, you're not aiming to create an antique language. The language in the German translation is very day by day, it's our language. So you combine a traditional with a modern language?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. I had no desire to write stylistically in a truly Victorian or 19th century way. I'm not interested in recreating a specific historical world, and in that sense I hoped to achieve something universal and detached from reality in a timeless book world, a story world. And the language, I wanted it to remain as accessible and as to speak directly to my readers.
So I read in the information material that you have rewritten it over and again. What was the first draft? Or you created the characters or the structure of the text?
One character came to me at the very beginning. Miss Winter, my main character, she appeared to me, and her story came to me quite clearly within the first year or 18 months. And at the end of 2 years, I had a draft which told the story, contained the characters, but I thought was not adequate. It was very much, after all, this is my first novel, and I think it's quite natural that the first time you write a novel, you know, there will be faults, there are flaws, and I love reading. I'm a big reader. When I read my own work, I knew that readers would be disappointed. And so it was necessary for me to start again and work extremely hard to rewrite and rewrite. I think every word changed. But finally, I was able to produce something which had a structure which is complex because of the demands of the story, but actually very accessible and a pleasure to read. Not complicated in the reading.
I see. And so entertainment is not a bad word for you. You're aiming to be entertaining, or
I don't know. Entertainment, what does entertainment suggest? It suggests a diversion. It suggests amusement. I think for me the pleasure of reading is perhaps a little bit more serious, a little bit more grave than that. I wanted to speak about things that to me are really important. Identity, family, grief, death, loss. These are quite big themes, and they're universal themes. But I wanted at the same time to write about these themes that to me are important in a way which would bring the reader an enormous pleasure. When I read, I love a book. Every time I open a book, I'm hoping for a story which I start reading in bed at night, and after 20 pages, I have to read more. And I look at the clock, I think I have to go to sleep now, I have to go to work tomorrow. But no, the book forces me to keep reading. That's the reading experience I love most, and I wanted to be able to create that same impassioned reading experience for my readers.
And would you say the atmosphere you created, is this an atmosphere you would find in our days British countryside? These little villages, houses, old castles, is this still existing, or is this only a myth?
The architecture exists. The atmosphere is more than just architecture. I think the atmosphere is a combination of the imagination and previous books and a certain English architecture, which lends itself to thoughts of ghosts.
And speaking of the immense success of the book, I read you teach French language.
Yes.
And now you're becoming a type of a literature star or a pop star. Is it a totally different world, traveling around through readings and go to America and stuff like that? Work in hotels and everything?
Yeah, it's a new job. It's a very different job from the one I had before, and certain things are the same in a classroom and addressing a group of readers. So in some ways I have relevant experience, but in many ways it's entirely different. And yes, I've done a lot of travelling. I've visited lots of countries. I've met lots of people. But you know, in between, I go home and I live in my same house with my husband and my cats, and my days are actually very similar to how they were before. So luckily I have a mix. I have all the new exciting touring, and then I go home and everything's the same.
And during the travel, you already work for new material, new ideas, or you only can write if you are at home in your house, or can you write if you travel?
It's curious that sometimes ideas come to you at the most inconvenient moment, and sometimes it's when you're at your most busy and you really don't have time to write things down, and you're in between two very important meetings, and then an idea will come to you. And so I always have a notebook in my bag. So I go home from a trip and all I have are 3 or 4 fragments of sentences, and then I have to think, what did I mean when I wrote that? What was it really about? But it's true that the only place I can really write properly is at my desk at home.
And speaking of, because it's an audiobook page, is the audiobook thing in Great Britain a big thing, or is it a niche market? First question. The other is, are you interested in this audiobook thing, and that maybe an adequate voice will read your novels? Do you interested in all these new forms of literature?
I think that in many countries the audiobook is very, very new or doesn't exist at all yet. And the UK is one market where it has been in existence for quite some time. The BBC, for instance, has a long tradition of audiobooks. My own feeling is that I remember when I was a child and my parents read to me, and I think that there is something enormously compelling and very beautiful about closing your eyes and hearing someone tell you a story. If you think about it, the world of story, you know, writing is relatively recent. The oral tradition existed long before that, and I think that as human beings, that it gives us an immense pleasure to hear a voice tell us a story. As adults, we don't experience that very often, and I think it's a very beautiful thing.
Do you used to listen to fairy tales from records? Because over here in Germany there are famous voices, especially for fairy tales. And so every child is born in the 60s knows special fairy tale voices. Is it similar in England?
Well, I grew up with a program called Jackanory on the television, and that was actors, actresses, once even I think Prince Charles, who sit in a chair and read a story, and it's the human voice that tells a story, not purely in images, but simply in words, and that's what I remember most strongly.
And speaking about a next book, is there a direction you're heading, or a total new atmosphere, total new field of writing, or is it? It's like, speaking of records, you know, the second record after the big success. Do you think about it, or do you plan something totally new for your next book?
When I'm writing, I think I am the kind of writer who takes I take direction from my characters. It seems to me that this group of characters are quite different from the first characters. In the 13th tale, I have two main characters who are both adult, both female. In my next book, I imagine, although it's too early to be certain, I imagine that I have more voices, perhaps 5 or 6 voices, taking turns to tell a story, and some of them are children.